Chuck Norris carved out a Hollywood career as one of its most bankable stars and a powerhouse in martial arts. His unforgettable fight with Bruce Lee in The Way of the Dragon is still considered one of the greatest moments in film history. But while Norris was conquering the screen, his personal life was far from picture perfect. His first marriage to Dianne Holechek was, by all accounts, messy, and the drama didn't end there. Now, at 83, Norris's ex-wife is pulling back the curtain and exposing the untold truths about their marriage and about him. The question on everyone's mind is, why is she speaking up now? And what exactly did she reveal about the man behind the legend? Stick around, because what she shared might just change the way you see Chuck Norris forever. The untold story of Chuck Norris, from fighter to Hollywood legend. Chuck Norris's life didn't begin with the larger-than-life toughness that made him a Hollywood icon. In fact, his story started in a small Oklahoma town where things were anything but simple. Born on March 10, 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma, to Wilma Lee and Ray D. Norris, Chuck came into a family that carried both strength and struggle. His father, a World War II Army veteran, worked as a mechanic, bus driver, and truck driver, but he also battled with alcohol. His mother, Wilma, of Irish descent, held the family together as best she could, while Ray, of German, British, and distant Cherokee roots, often drifted in and out of their lives. From the start, Chuck wasn't the fearless warrior people now imagine. He was shy, insecure, and academically average. He described himself as a boy who faded into the background, weighed down by embarrassment over his father's drinking binges and the family's financial struggles. His introversion wasn't just a phase, it defined much of his childhood. By the time his parents divorced when he was 16, Chuck was already used to disappointment. He moved with his mother and brothers to Prairie Village, Kansas, and later Torrance, California, where life still didn't offer him much direction. But life has a way of throwing people into situations that shape them. For Chuck, that turning point came when he enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1958. Stationed at Osan Air Base in South Korea, he was just another airman, working as an air policeman. Yet, it was here that a new version of Chuck began to emerge. Surrounded by the culture of martial arts, he started training in Tang Soo Do. He didn't just dabble in it, he immersed himself. And it was in Korea that he picked up the nickname Chuck, a moniker that would soon eclipse Carlos Ray Norris, the name he was born with. When he returned stateside, he kept serving at March Air Force Base in California, but his passion was already shifting. Martial arts had lit something inside him. By the time he was discharged in 1962 with the rank of Airman First Class, he wasn't just a veteran. He was a man chasing a new identity. Waiting for a spot to open up as a Torrance police officer, Chuck took a leap and opened his first martial arts studio. At first, it was survival, but soon it became a career. Of course, Chuck didn't start out winning. In his early days on the karate circuit, he was knocked down more times than he stood tall. He lost to Joe Louis, Alan Steen, and Tony Tulliners. In 1968, he faced what many thought would be a crushing final blow. His 10th career loss against Luis Delgado, but that defeat became fuel. Later that same year he came back stronger and avenged that loss, snatching the professional middleweight karate champion title. From that point forward, he held on to it for 6 consecutive years, solidifying his place as one of the most dominant fighters of his era. By 1967, Chuck was winning tournaments left and right. Victories over names like Vic Moore gave him momentum. He became champion at the All-American Karate Championship in Madison Square Garden, a massive step in his career. With time, his reputation wasn't just about titles, it was about his style, his presence, and his ability to rise after setbacks. In 1969, he was on top of the world, defending his titles at the International Karate Championship, racking up wins, and earning the Fighter of the Year award from Black Belt magazine. He was no longer the shy kid from Oklahoma. He was now a name people recognized in the martial arts world. And while the tournaments built his career, they also opened doors. One of those doors was Bruce Lee. The two met when Lee was still making a name on the Green Hornet. Their friendship turned into a professional collaboration and, eventually, into one of the most iconic on-screen fights in film history. In 1972's The Way of the Dragon, Chuck became Bruce Lee's rival in a scene that would live forever in cinematic legend. The movie didn't just smash records in Hong Kong, it pulled in an estimated $130 million worldwide and helped launch Chuck Norris toward international stardom. But Chuck wasn't content with being Bruce Lee's opponent. He wanted to build his own brand of action hero. With encouragement from his student and friend Steve McQueen, he started taking acting lessons at MGM in the mid-70s. He turned down easy martial arts gigs, wanting roles with more story. His first starring role came in 1977's Breaker, a low-budget film that surprisingly made waves at the box office. The momentum carried into 1978 with Good Guys Wear Black. Nobody wanted to distribute it, so Chuck and his team rented theaters and showed it themselves. Against the odds, the film raked in over $18 million on a $1 million budget. That gamble paid off. It wasn't just a box office win. It was the movie that crowned Chuck as America's first homegrown martial arts star. From there, the hits kept rolling. A Force of One in 1979, The Octagon in 1980, and An Eye for an Eye in 1981 cemented him as a bankable action hero. By the early 80s, studios like Columbia, MGM, and Orion were lining up to cast him in movies like Silent Rage, Forced Vengeance, and Lone Wolf McQuade. And then came his deal with Cannon Films, where he headlined the Missing in Action trilogy, turning him into one of the defining action stars of the decade. What made Chuck different from the other martial arts stars at the time was his distinctly American approach. His films weren't just about kicks and punches. They carried themes tied to American politics, identity, and justice. That formula struck a chord, especially during the Cold War years, when audiences craved heroes who stood tall against the odds. But Norris wasn't only about action sequences and box office wins. Over the years, he expanded his reach, writing books on martial arts, fitness, philosophy, Christianity, politics, and even Western fiction. He became a New York Times best-selling author, proving that he could command attention not just with his fists, but also with his words. From a shy, introverted boy in Oklahoma to one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, Chuck Norris's journey is nothing short of remarkable. And as much as audiences remember him as the tough guy on screen, the truth is, Chuck Norris built his legacy not by being invincible, but by refusing to stay down when life tried to knock him out. Inside Chuck Norris's love life, the women who stole the action star's heart. When people think of Chuck Norris, they picture the unstoppable action star, the martial arts legend who dominated the screen in the 70s and 80s. But what most fans forget is that behind the fight scenes and fame, there's a very different story. One tied to love, betrayal, resilience, and two very different women who shared his life. One of them stood by him long before the world knew his name, and the other became his partner once he was already an international superstar. And together, their stories reveal a side of Chuck Norris most fans never see. Long before Chuck was famous, there was Dianne Holechek. Dianne was born Dianne K. Holechek on November 27, 1941, in Los Angeles, California. Unlike Chuck, who grew up shy and introverted in Oklahoma, Dianne's early life is still a bit of a mystery. Not much is known about her parents or her upbringing, but what we do know is that she attended Torrance High School in the 1950s. It was there that fate stepped in, because Torrance High wasn't just where Dianne studied. It was where she crossed paths with a young Carlos Ray Norris long before he became Chuck. They were just teenagers when their romance began, and by the time Chuck enlisted in the Air Force in 1958, the two were already seeing each other. While stationed in South Korea as an air policeman, Chuck wrote to her from overseas, pouring his heart into letters. And in one of those letters, he proposed. Imagine that, half a world away, with his future still uncertain, Chuck knew he wanted Dianne as his wife. That December, barely out of high school, the two tied the knot in Torrance. Chuck was 18, Dianne was just 17. He wore his Air Force uniform for their wedding, and afterward, the young couple took a modest 4-day honeymoon in Big Bear, California. They weren't wealthy, they weren't famous, They were just two kids in love, starting their lives together. By 1962, Chuck's Air Force service had ended, and the couple welcomed their first child, Michael R. Norris, on October 4th. 2 years later, in May 1964, their second son, Eric, was born. From the outside, they looked like the picture of a growing, happy family. But behind closed doors, things were far more complicated. That same year, 1962, Chuck had been unfaithful. His affair led to a child born outside of his marriage, something that would haunt his relationship with Dianne. Still, she stayed. The betrayal cast a long shadow, but the couple pushed forward. Their marriage stretched on for decades, surviving Chuck's grueling rise in martial arts and then Hollywood. But as his fame grew, the cracks widened. By 1988, after 30 years together, the marriage had run its course. They separated and finalized their divorce in 1989, while Chuck was filming The Delta Force 2. After all those years, all the sacrifices, and all the trials, Dianne walked away. For Dianne, life after Chuck was quiet. Apart from a small acting role in Hollywood '84, a television project she appeared in during 1984, she never pursued fame. She returned to a private life as a homemaker, away from the cameras and the chaos of Hollywood. Her net worth is estimated to be around $10 million, a reflection of her settlement and her connection to Chuck's fortune. Meanwhile, her sons carried on their own paths. Mike became an actor and director with an estimated net worth of $3 million, and Eric pursued a career as a stunt coordinator and race car driver. While Dianne's chapter ended, Chuck's story with love was far from over. Because soon enough, he entered a relationship with Gina O'Kelly. Gina was born on August 10, 1963 in California, 23 years younger than Chuck. She was raised in a family with 3 siblings, her brother Eric and 2 sisters, Elizabeth and Maureen. Her father, Alan Gordon O'Kelly, passed away in 2008. Unlike Dianne, who was always outside the spotlight, Gina had already lived a bit of a public life. She worked as a professional model. She was even married once before, to Gordon Hinchberger, with whom she had 2 children, Kelly and Tim. By the late 1990s, fate brought her into Chuck's life. The story goes that Chuck had been out on a date with another woman, attending a theater production where Gina was performing in a small role. But when he saw her on stage, he was captivated. He instructed his agent to set up a meeting, and soon after, what began as a friendship turned into something more. They dated for about a year, and in November 1998, Chuck and Gina married. This time, Chuck wasn't the struggling martial artist in theater uniform. He was the Hollywood action star, already cemented in pop culture. Their age gap raised eyebrows at the time, but the two seemed unfazed. Together, they welcomed twins, Dakota and Danilee, on August 30th, 2001. Gina also stepped into the role of stepmother to Chuck's 3 other children, Mike, Dina, and Eric. Unlike his first marriage, Chuck and Gina's relationship unfolded in the public eye. Gina appeared alongside him in various TV shows and even commercials, including the famous Total Gym ads. But their marriage was tested in ways no Hollywood script could predict. In 2013, Gina fell seriously ill. What began as rheumatoid arthritis treatment spiraled into something far more devastating. She developed gadolinium deposition disease, spiraled gadolinium deposition disease, a painful condition triggered by certain medical injections. Gina suffered from burning sensations across her body, and her health rapidly declined. For Chuck, the tough guy gadolinium deposition disease guy image meant nothing in that moment. He put his career on hold to care for her. Though she's not fully recovered, Gina's condition has improved, and the couple continues to stand side by side. Their relationship became defined not by fame, but by resilience and devotion. Together, Chuck and Gina also poured their energy into philanthropy. In 1990, Chuck had founded the Kick Drugs Out of America Foundation. In 2003, with Gina by his side, it was renamed Kickstart Kids. Their goal was simple but powerful: use martial arts to teach young people discipline, confidence, and character. Today, they've reached over 100,000 kids, creating a legacy far beyond films and TV shows. In 2023, they revealed more about their life together. Health and wellness are at the center of their daily routines. They spoke about their ranch lifestyle, taking walks, meditating, praying, and working out together. They prioritize healthy aging, even following simple rules like avoiding late dinners to wake up feeling energized. But don't be fooled. It's not all strict discipline. Chuck admitted coffee is a daily staple, and sometimes they'll break their rules for dessert. From Dianne to Gina, Chuck Norris's personal life is a tale of two very different loves. Dianne was the high school sweetheart, the woman who stood by him during his struggles, sacrifices, and rise to fame. Gina is the partner who shared his later years, health battles, and charitable mission. Both shaped him in profound ways, so while fans will always remember Chuck Norris as the martial arts powerhouse, the action star who became a cultural phenomenon, it's the women behind the legend, Dianne Holechek and Gina O'Kelly, who tell the real story of the man. The dark side of Chuck Norris: lawsuits, scandals, and secrets. When you hear the name Chuck Norris, one image comes to mind. The man who could roundhouse kick anyone into next week. He wasn't just another action star. He was the face of toughness in the 80s and 90s. The lawman of Walker, Texas Ranger, and the martial arts legend who once clashed with Bruce Lee in The Way of the Dragon. His name became a brand for invincibility. But here's the catch. Behind that iron reputation lies a side of Chuck Norris most people never saw. From lawsuits to fan outrage and even a scandal that had parents furious, his career wasn't as spotless as the action hero image suggested. So what really went down? Let's strip away the legend and dig into the controversies that threatened to shake the man no one thought could be broken. Back in 2017, Chuck Norris wasn't in the headlines for a movie or a viral roundhouse kick. Instead, he and his wife, Gina, filed a $10 million lawsuit against several healthcare companies. Their claim? That Gina had been poisoned by gadolinium, a chemical used in MRI scans. According to the lawsuit, the contrast dye left Gina with debilitating health problems, burning pain throughout her body, violent shaking, numbness, kidney damage, and even cognitive struggles. Chuck put his career on pause to focus entirely on her health, saying his mission was no longer Hollywood, but fighting to raise awareness about the dangers of MRI contrast agents. The case attracted major media attention. For years, gadolinium had been considered safe, with medical societies pointing out it had been used in over 300 million patients worldwide. But Chuck and Gina's story painted a different picture, one of cover-ups and ignored victims. Their lawyer even revealed that Gina was originally being tested for rheumatoid arthritis, but instead left the scans with a much bigger problem. The couple argued that if they had known about the risks, she would have never taken the dye. They wanted accountability, they wanted justice, and they wanted answers for thousands of others who might be suffering in silence. Pharmaceutical giants like Bracco Imaging and distributor McKesson were dragged into the case. Of course, the companies denied wrongdoing, insisting their products were safe and FDA approved. Still, the lawsuit sparked conversations about medical transparency and the risks patients unknowingly face. But just when people thought this might become a landmark case, the story fizzled. In 2020, Chuck and Gina quietly dropped the lawsuit without a settlement. Each side agreed to pay its own legal fees. No payout, no win, just silence. For some fans, this raised questions. Why walk away after fighting so hard? Was it a matter of legal pressure, lack of evidence, or simply exhaustion? No matter the reason, the lawsuit left a mark, not on the pharmaceutical companies, but on Chuck Norris's public image. The invincible warrior had been pulled into a very human battle, one that didn't end with a clean victory. But long before lawsuits and courtroom drama, Chuck found himself in hot water for a very different reason: his choice of film roles. In 1982, Norris starred in a movie called Silent Rage. On paper, it sounded bold. A sci-fi horror film blending martial arts with slasher thrills. Imagine Frankenstein meets Chuck Norris. Sounds wild, right? The movie opens with a chilling murder, followed by scientists experimenting on the killer's body with a regeneration formula. Predictably, the killer rises again, stronger, more dangerous, practically unstoppable. It was violent, bloody, and packed with a sinister undertone about science gone wrong. For Chuck, this was a gamble. Up until then, audiences knew him for martial arts showdowns and heroic, no-nonsense roles. Silent Rage was darker and riskier, and while the horror angle wasn't what turned fans against him, something else buried in the film nearly torpedoed his career. In the movie, Chuck's character, Sheriff Dan Stevens, finds himself in a romantic entanglement with Allison, played by Toni Collette. And yes, that means a full-on love scene. Now, by modern standards, it was tame, but in the early 80s, Norris fans were not having it. Audiences who looked up to him as a clean-cut, all-American hero were outraged. Parents complained. Letters poured in. Many threatened to boycott his movies altogether. For them, seeing Chuck in bed with a woman wasn't just shocking, it was betrayal. Norris later admitted he got tons of angry mail, with fans insisting they didn't want him playing the Richard Gere type. They wanted their Chuck pure, untouchable, the guy who punched bad guys, not someone caught up in Hollywood's steamy side. The backlash was so intense that Norris promised never to do it again, and he kept that promise. After Silent Rage, he avoided heavy romantic scenes entirely. At most, fans would get a kiss, and even that didn't come until much later during Walker, Texas Ranger. Ironically, director Michael Miller revealed the love scene wasn't even in the script. Chuck improvised it, and it almost cost him his fan base. The controversy over Silent Rage didn't end with angry fans. Around the same time, Chuck signed a 3-picture deal with MGM. It should have been a career milestone, but creative control issues soon caused tension, and Norris canceled the deal midway. He shifted over to Orion Pictures instead, trying to regain control over the roles he played and the image he projected. Looking back, it's clear Silent Rage was a turning point. On one hand, it proved Norris was willing to experiment, to step outside the box. On the other hand, it taught him a harsh lesson. His brand was bigger than him. Fans didn't want experimentation. They wanted Chuck Norris exactly as they imagined him: tough, righteous, and morally clean. Despite all this, Chuck Norris survived controversies that might have ended someone else's career. He didn't get canceled. He didn't fade into obscurity. Instead, he adapted. He leaned into what fans loved most about him and doubled down on his image as the ultimate action hero. Chuck Norris's ex-wife reveals the truth about him. Chuck Norris's wife once stood quietly in the background of his Hollywood success, but the truth about their marriage tells a very different story. Behind the cameras, the fight scenes, and the legend of the unstoppable action hero, Norris's personal life wasn't nearly as indestructible as the man he played on screen. His first marriage to Dianne Holechek carried cracks that eventually split wide open. At the heart of it all was a painful secret, a love child, a betrayal, and a truth that would only come out decades later. So what really happened behind the scenes of Chuck Norris's picture-perfect marriage? And how much of it did his ex-wife, Dianne, endure before it all finally came undone? Let's dive in. Chuck Norris married his high school sweetheart, Dianne Holechek, back in 1958. On the surface, theirs looked like the ultimate American love story. They built a life together, raised children, and for years appeared solid. But beneath that picture-perfect frame was a decision Chuck made early in their marriage, one that would eventually shake the foundation of everything they built. While stationed in California with the U.S. Air Force, Norris had a brief fling with a woman named Johanna. It was reckless, passionate, and happened in the back of a car. At the time, Chuck thought it was nothing more than a passing mistake. What he didn't realize was that this one encounter would change his life forever. That affair resulted in the birth of a daughter named Dina, but Chuck had no idea she even existed, not for 26 years. Johanna, Dina's mother, made the decision to keep her daughter's existence hidden. Part of her reasoning was to protect Chuck's family. After all, he was already married to Dianne and had 2 children with her. Exposing the truth could have destroyed the marriage and the life they were building together. But that secrecy came at a price. Dina grew up knowing who her father was, yet staying in the shadows. For years, she lived with the weight of that silence. Only after Chuck's marriage to Dianne finally collapsed did she decide it was time to step forward. Years later, Norris came clean about the affair in his autobiography. He admitted that during his time with Johanna, he had never once told her he was married. He described it as one of the deepest regrets of his life, a betrayal not only to Johanna, but to Dianne as well. Lying about his marriage wasn't just a mistake. It was, in his own words, a shameful breach of trust that haunted him for decades. "To my shame, I never told Johanna that I was married," Norris confessed. Those words revealed the heavy guilt he carried long after the damage had been done. By 1988, his marriage to Dianne had reached its breaking point. They had been together for 3 decades and raised 3 children, but the weight of infidelity was too much to overcome. Their divorce was finalized that year. Norris admitted that his cheating had played a major role in the collapse, yet he continued to speak respectfully about his first wife. He often credited Dianne for standing by him in the early years, even when money was scarce and they were barely scraping by. "She never complained, even when we were scrimping and scraping," Norris recalled. For all the turbulence that came later, he acknowledged that without her support, his rise to stardom might not have been possible. After the divorce, Dina finally reached out. Despite the decades of silence, she pushed forward until Norris agreed to meet. The moment they reunited, Chuck described it as unforgettable. He explained that he didn't need DNA or blood tests to prove Dina was his daughter. The second they embraced, both of them broke down crying, and he said it felt like he had known her all his life. That embrace was the start of a new chapter, a relationship that grew stronger with time, making up for the years lost to secrecy. While Chuck moved on with his second wife, Gina O'Kelly, Dianne chose an entirely different path. After the divorce, she stepped away from the public completely. No interviews, no tell-all memoirs, no red carpet appearances. Reports say she devoted herself to her sons, Mike and Eric, and later, her grandchildren. Unlike many Hollywood ex-wives who might have cashed in on their story, Dianne kept her dignity intact. She chose privacy, letting Chuck tell his side while she focused on family. In many ways, her silence revealed more than any words could. The truth about Chuck Norris's first marriage is nothing like the action-packed heroics we're used to seeing on screen. Behind the iron-tough exterior was a man whose choices hurt the people closest to him. Choices he later admitted filled him with regret. His affair, his secret daughter, and the eventual collapse of his marriage to Dianne Holechek proved that even the strongest heroes stumble. But out of that mess came something unexpected, a daughter who fought for her place in his life, and a bond that managed to outshine decades of secrecy. So, what do you think? Did Dianne's quiet dignity say more about Chuck Norris than anything he ever admitted? And does his story make him more human or just more complicated? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.